everyone. Good to see you all. Thanks for inviting me to Hanover. My parents had lived in Hanover for a bit. Now they're in Henrico. So I know that I appreciate the Hanover Democrats welcoming them for the time when they were also Hanover Democrats. I am Abigail Spanberger, and I do represent the 7th District. There was once upon a time, Hanover was in the 7th District. Certainly with the redistricting that occurred back before the 2016 elections. Unfortunately, you all were very supportive of my efforts in 2018 to unseat Mr. Bratt, but we're not in the district at that point. I am running for re-election. Notably, our Central Virginia district, the current 7th District, was quartered population-wise and divided between the 4th District, which is represented by Congressman McEachin, the 1st District, which is Whitman, and then the 5th District, currently Bob Good, and then the 7th District. So our district has run and continues right now. We still have the current lines. North to south from Culpeper to Nottoway, and has Western Spotsylvania, Henrico, and Chesterfield. With the redistricting, our district is now turning from a mix of rural and suburban, north to south, to a mix of rural and suburban, west to east. So we have Madison County, Greene County, a sliver up Albemarle, and then we stretch east to King George County, and then down to Caroline County. The population crux of the new district is going to be within Prince William County, Stafford County, and Fredericksburg City. Current 7th District counties that are coming from the current to the new are Spotsylvania County, Culpeper County, and Orange County. In the House of Representatives, I serve on the Agriculture Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. I'm a former CIA case officer, so I worked in national security for my professional career before I moved back to Virginia back in 2014 and started working in the private sector for a short period of time before running for office. So my CIA background, my national security background is something that I leverage and draw upon as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And then as a Virginian, and the only Virginian on the Agriculture Committee, which is something that I will tell anyone who can listen, I really represent the interests of all of Virginia agriculture on that committee. I'm excited because 2023, we have a farm bill. We only do a farm bill every 5 years. So when I was elected and joined the committee in 2019, I was already excited and looking towards and planning towards 2023. Across the new district, I will continue to have heavily agricultural portions of the district. And so I love being able to ensure that I'm representing the needs of our agricultural and more rural communities. And then notably the mix that is a heavily rural and agricultural district with a heavily suburban one. So the new maps create a challenge for us in that the district continues to be very competitive. Like my current district, it's a district that the president did win, but then our governor-elect also won. So it's a district that does flip and has demonstrated that it will flip, including just a couple months ago. So I need to work hard to ensure that every person in our new district knows they're in the new district, knows that I will be on their ballot in November. My current counties, I was just speaking with the Orange County Democratic Committee. Our current counties ideally will deliver the message of how good I have been for the county, for the communities and the economy and the people across that county. And then hopefully I can earn votes all across this new 7th District and continue doing work on Capitol Hill and back home in the district for the people I represent. So I'm really grateful for all of the work that you all do to engage at the local, the state, and the federal level. And certainly I appreciate the support that you all have given me pre-COVID. I was happy to join you all for some meetings, and I always did appreciate the warm welcome. And I'm happy, Daniel, I'm happy to answer any questions or whatever. I apologize that I was a couple minutes late. I was a little bit long-winded in my answers to the folks of Orange County, and then I had a bit of a technical difficulty with my presence here. So I know that we're I started a little bit late, but I do want to, I'm happy to answer any and all questions you all may have. And I'm really grateful for you having me.
Well, thank you for joining us, Congresswoman Spanberger, and I'm happy to open the floor for any questions people may have. I do know that there's a campaign effort to make sure that you are on the ballot, right? So we're going to get signatures and so forth, and I've been in contact with Rachel, who's heading up that campaign effort. So anyone on the call who might be interested in that, know that that is something that'll happen probably a few weeks after this meeting. We'll be sending out more information about that. But yeah, the floor is open for anyone who would like to talk.
Election.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
But I was going for anyone who is interested in supporting that, maybe in neighboring Caroline County, we do have, for every election, we have to get ballot access signatures. So that's not necessarily committing that anyone's going to vote for me. In 2018, I signed the ballot access petition for one of my opponents. That's just about ensuring people can get on the ballot. So if anybody wants to support those efforts and help us get signatures in the lines of the new 7th, particularly neighboring Caroline, we would love any support in any of the counties that you might be willing to provide.
We don't have to live in your district, right?
That's right, you do not. To sign it, the people who sign it have to live in the district, but people who are collecting do not. I see there's a woman with a pink and black shirt, but you're muted, ma'am.
Am I still muted?
I can hear you.
Okay. Are you going to move? Or if you're not going to move, if you don't need, I mean, will you need to move? And if you're not planning on moving, do you have a plan to overcome that?
Yeah, so this is an important question. So legally, and particularly in Virginia, because in Virginia, our state legislators have to live in their district at the time that they're sworn in. At the federal level, you do not have to live in your district, frankly, at any point. And many members of Congress, frankly, because of the redistricting process, do not live in their actual districts. The challenge for me becomes I currently represent the lines of the current 7th district until January 2023. And so given that I'm currently representing the current 7th district and campaigning in the new 7th district, and there's overlap of about 200,000 constituents, again, because our district was quartered in 3 counties, I am not planning to make any major family shifts this summer. And so I do suspect that that will be an issue that some of my opponents may raise. At this point, there is no one who has, with the current lines of the new 7th, there is no one intending that I'm aware of. That could change, but and if that does change, I will let you all know. There's no one who intends to enter a primary. So at this point, provided I get all of the signatures necessary, I will be a Democrat without a primary, and then the Democrat on the general election ballot. And so I do suspect that will be an issue that may be used against me. One of the Republicans who's entered the race also doesn't live in the lines of the new 7th. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. But certainly my husband and I and our family are having very significant conversations about what our next steps are. But then, I currently represent 10 counties and live in one of them. And I think that I have done a very, very good job of representing the other 9 counties where I don't live. And I know their issues. I know their Board of Supervisor members. I know their mayors. And I have worked very, very hard in support of communities that, before I was elected, I had spent very little, if any, time in them. And I think that I have served them very, very well. And so moving to this new district with 11 localities, ultimately, if and when my family does make any kind of major family shifts, in a district as large as this one, again, it stretches from Greene and Madison over to King George, up to Prince William, and down to Caroline. I will still be choosing among multiple options in terms of where I might be kind of home-based, but my goal is to ensure that any of the counties in the new 7th feel that I am just as present as I have been in the current 7th district, regardless of where I where I may go to sleep at night, which notably many nights of the week is actually Washington, DC, because I'm working on Capitol Hill. But it's I won't say it's a complicated issue, but I will say that if that's the biggest line of attack against me, then I think I'm doing all right in terms of the policies that I've supported and the work that I've done on behalf of the people I represent.
Good.
What percentage of your new district is the same as the old district? About.
So in terms of it's 3 full counties. And so I currently represent the western half of Spotsylvania. The new district will have all of Spotsylvania.
About what percent is are they the same?
So, I mean, population wise, it's 200,000 out of the full number is like 770,000.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, wanted to ask, one of the things that you've been really good about as a Congresswoman has been, especially in the most recent election cycle, helping turnout voters, get a large amount of people supporting canvass launches for folks like Skylar Van Valkenburg, Rodney Willett, all the delegates in the local area. And I wanted to ask, it's sort of a 2-part question. One, now that the 7th district is separate, is distant, do you still, plan on helping those folks get reelected once 2023 comes along, as well as sort of how are you sort of planning to replicate that great turnout operation that's been built in this area, up north in the new areas of the district that you haven't represented before?
Hello, Avery. Thank you for that question. So I think, kind of depending upon where you've been focused, I have been, you would know that I have been very engaged with our local House of Delegates and state Senate candidates. I have also been engaged in other places in the states, across the state, where people have wanted and needed support. I'm the only Virginian who serves on the Agriculture Committee, which I have already mentioned and will mention any chance I get. And so I had been helpful to a couple different candidates out in the Charlottesville area, down in the New River Valley, because speaking to, from a Virginia perspective, the importance of agriculture, broadband investment, other rural development related issues that mattered in those races. I did travel to be supportive of those candidates. I've previously been supportive canvass launches, events, kind of up the 95 corridor. So actually communities that will be in the new 7th, because there has been overlaps. While I've only represented so far the western portion of Spotsylvania, Board of Supervisor races and school board races and House of Delegates races don't necessarily align with those borders. And then, even though they've been separate congressional districts, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, there's a lot of Stafford County, there's a lot of kind of social overlap. And so candidates who have wanted my support, either endorsement or on the ground work I've done. So that will continue to be the same. And I look forward to really channeling my efforts towards the new 7th, but certainly as any of the candidates who I've previously worked for, if they want me to be helpful to them, canvass kickoffs, engagement, volunteerism, I'm happy to do that. Also, as you mentioned, we have built a pretty significant infrastructure here, and our campaign has done it. Volunteers, organizers, advocates, the committees, kind of committee aligned groups have done it on their own. And so I think what we've been good at doing is overlapping those efforts where it's not just the campaign sucks all volunteers and then we disappear and people are on their own. We have sort of helped work with structures as they were getting bigger and stronger. And so ideally, the structures that we have worked on in Chesterfield County and Henrico County will remain as strong. And certainly I'm willing to help with those efforts into the future and be present. In the northern portion of the new 7th district, Prince William, Stafford, Fredericksburg City, where there has been really amazing on the ground organization, for years, but particularly most notably with electoral successes, since 2017. It's at this point, it's working with them to see where we can be additive and helpful. And our campaign now, it's been, I guess, 2 weeks since we've gotten the new maps. So we've been pivoting very quickly. Of the frontline members, so those are the districts that are considered to be, in danger or very, very competitive. We were the first campaign to get an office nationwide because I built up my campaign team early so that we could do all the on the ground engagement, which over planning was perhaps not great because our office location and some of our over planning does not align with the new lines of the 7th, but I wanted to be prepared. And so now we're looking for new office space and the actual sort of physical strength in the new district. So, I think that I've generally answered follow-up. I'm happy to answer that.
No follow-up. Just, thank you, for everything you've done for the Richmond area while you were representing us. Thank you.
Hello, Ms. Spanberger.
Hi,
Nice to see you again. I've seen you at a couple of my churches, a couple of times over the past few years, Mount Olive and Glen Allen, Virginia. I just had a question. If someone, asking for a friend, I guess, if someone was to think about running for office, whether that's Board of Supervisors, school board, all the way up to the House or whatever seat it may be, what would your advice be for someone who's thinking about that, who lives in a heavily populated Republican district or area?
I think it depends heavily on what the seat would be, and I say that because Board of Supervisor, the issues are very different than maybe the State House issues, and so if I would actually my answers would be so specific that I'm going to put an email in the chat, Ellison, and I welcome you or your friend to be in touch.
Okay.
That email goes to a variety of different people just so it doesn't get lost on the radar. So if you send that there, I'm happy to have a conversation with that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a question. Being from Mechanicsville and then going to school in Southwest Virginia and Charlottesville, you just kind of see in Virginia how different culturally these districts are. And as I've lived in many different places, I just found how striking it is being from Northern Virginia to, Southwest to, the 757. I was wondering, do you think it's going to be like a challenging thing to kind of go from your district and then kind of move up into Northern Virginia, which is probably culturally a little bit different than the district you're used to representing?
The answer to that question is somewhat yes and somewhat no. And I say yes because I don't think you should ever take anything for granted. The district goes as far north. It's Prince William County is the northern portion. And certainly I have, when I lived in Mount Vernon, which is the southern portion of Alexandria, I had a ton of friends who lived in Prince William, and I spent a lot of time in Prince William. My sister lives in Fredericksburg City, so I have a lot of connections to that 95 corridor. I have a lot of friends who live in Stafford, both former colleagues and friends from high school who have moved up that area. I think what's interesting about the new 7th is it's similar to the current 7th, which is we have very agricultural, very rural communities. Currently it's Culpeper all the way to Nottoway, and then Henrico and Chesterfield. And so those are already communities that have really kind of different top of mind issues at first blush. And certainly there are some, broadband connectivity is not an issue in Henrico, right? Like it hasn't been for years. And that's the same for Fredericksburg City, right? But access issues and affordability issues are an issue. And so when we're talking about broadband, in Culpeper, it might be how do we actually make sure the fiber gets to your house? But other parts of the district, it's okay, the fiber is to a neighborhood or the fiber is to a community, but not everybody there has the same access. And so access, affordability, just actual physical presence, like when you dig into an issue a bit more, then indeed it can be there can be overlaps between communities that otherwise the priorities seem very different. In terms of the more, in the rural and agricultural communities, it's ag-related policy, it's livestock, producing related policy, it's conservation related policy. And I don't have a previous experience in those spaces before I came to Congress. And I have found that at times that has been very valuable because, I can freely say, I don't have a background in agriculture. And so I'm asking farmers and producers across our district to talk to me about what are the issues that are primary top of mind. And so the shift from my current rural agricultural communities to the new ones will be a lot pretty similar. They're very closely tied. And I have spent time in overlapping districts. On the suburban side, the Henrico Chesterfield suburban communities kind of shifting northward to Fredericksburg up to Prince William will be different. I'm already really in terms of hearing from people, I'm already looking at committee assignments that I might consider adding that would help ensure that I'm being most relevant and engaged on issues, particularly transportation and infrastructure. And there will be a shift on that committee because the chair is outgoing. So those are the sorts of things. How can I make sure that when I'm bringing the concerns of the new 7th to Capitol Hill from a legislative perspective, like where do I have to be loudest in that relevant voice? And so, I grew up in Henrico County, but I certainly did not begin, that you think things when you're from a community. And I think to some degree, recognizing that, I've spent a lot of time in Prince William, I spent a lot of time in Fredericksburg, a lot of time in Stafford, but I have now learned very much that I now know what I did not know about a community where I had grown up, where my parents were. And so I think I don't, even if I had all of, a house in all of those counties, I wouldn't presume at this point to think I know everything about it because, there's so much more to the needs of a community, be it, what the Board of Supervisors may tell you, what the school board may tell you, what parents may tell you, what, young people working and commuting far may tell you. You just got to be on receive mode because there's a lot. And sometimes, many of the challenges that people face across Virginia and certainly across the country are similar, but sometimes it's an issue of translation. And sometimes it's an issue of where they percolate. So recovery related challenges, mental health related challenges. In some communities, the concern is mental health. In some communities, it's mental health when mental health is existing in that addiction and substance use disorder space. So, this new district has a pretty significant veteran community. It also has Quantico and Dahlgren. And I already do a tremendous amount in the military veteran related space because I currently represent Fort Pickett. So kind of different military community, but same general sort of veterans related needs. Because I represent Spotsylvania, I've already done a lot as it relates to the CBOX and the VA related challenges of Northern Virginia, and the kind of further down 95, but veterans who are coming in to the Fredericksburg area for support. That's already been an issue that I've contended with by virtue of the fact that so many of the people who actually live in my district do pivot there currently. And I've worked a lot with McGuire, which is currently not in our district, but many of the same veterans who live in the current 7th or the future 7th go to McGuire. So there's already some overlap depending upon, and those are just a couple different examples. But if there's any follow-up, I'm happy to answer it, Alex.
Well, thank you. I want to cut in just for a moment. We try to keep our meetings to an hour that's recorded. And I'm hoping that Congresswoman Spanberger, you can stay on for a few more minutes after I end recording, in case people want to feel more comfortable. So typically what we do is we go for an hour, record it, turn it off, and then stay on for as long as you can, for as long as Matt Rowe, the school board member in Fredericksburg, can stay on, because this is a very important topic, and both of you have been great representatives. And I just want to mention something that I hadn't heard before I asked for adjournment of the regular meeting. When I first came into office, I was pushing hard for broadband expansion when people were still on the fence of it. I knocked on every congressperson's door, and one of those congresspeople's doors was Abigail Spanberger's door. And I'm not saying it's because of me, but 1 week after knocking on that door and having that conversation with her staff, she pushed for Congress to expand broadband by about from, I think it was 50 million to 522 million. And she convinced the entire House to accept it. And for the first time ever in our region, someone got a grant. Louisa got a grant shortly after that. And it was the first time in the entire history of our region of getting a rural grant. And it was because of your agricultural committee work. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. I know we could talk for hours about it, but it was just really exciting to me to see that happen. And I'm very, very grateful for all of your efforts. Is there any new business to come before our council? If not, is there a motion to adjourn our regular meeting?
I move we adjourn.
All right, our regular meeting has